Parks, pavements, benches, squares, statues, sculptures. They're all spaces that belong firmly in the public realm, spaces that belong to each and every one of us. But how do we make the most of these places? How do we gauge what the community needs from their shared space? And how can we use the public realm to tackle some of society's trickiest problems? In this episode of Bailiwick Podcasts, I, Charlie Flynn, spoke to Sasha Gibb, former art director of the CCA Galleries and the founder of the Public Voice Common Ground project. We tried to nail down exactly what we mean by the public realm, the importance of public spaces that work for everyone, and how you can have your say on what Jersey's common places should look like. So we're here to talk about your project, Public Voice Common Ground. So I suppose the place to start would be, could you explain what it is and where it came from, I suppose?
So Public Voice Common Ground developed out of some research last year on how to improve St Heliers public spaces for its people. It was initially sponsored and supported by government. It's now got backing from the Future Spaces Ministerial Group, and in particular Kirsten Morell and the Economic Development Department. What is really important about Public Voice Common Ground is that it is a partnership. So it's a partnership between community, business and government. So it's not run by any sector alone. And I think that is the key difference, in that we are all aware that there are many problems within our society, within Jersey, within St Helier, and there are many extremely important agendas, whether it is health, whether it is well-being, whether it is traffic, whether it's green spaces. And it's, I believe, not up to one sector to solve these, and the only way to create an entity that is sustainable is to have buy-in, and if you like, to be offering value to those people you're supposed to be supporting. My background is the arts, so I've worked in design, I've worked in the not-for-profit arts with Art House Jersey, I've worked in the commercial arts with CCA Galleries, but I'm also an MBA, so I study business and I study change management and I study how people work. And it's been a huge pleasure to be working with other professors on this model, so that we can actually create a model for delivering the change that all of us are getting so agitated about wanting to happen. And, some extremely good ideas of things that want to happen, but why are they not happening? And I think that's perhaps one of the key, one of the key points of what we're trying to do. Yeah, so there are kind of, as I understand it, there are kind of a few aspects of what you want to do. And so I suppose one of the more sort of visual ones, and the ones that is kind of going to be happening more immediately, is you're doing these sort of pop-up spaces. That's the first kind of part. You're going to be skips. There are skips with forests in them, as far as I'm aware. Is that pretty much right? So yeah, what we're doing this year is we're running a pilot, and the pilot is called Public Voice Common Ground. Yeah. Like all pilots, it's a bit chaotic. It's a bit messy. We're trying things out, and the first part of that is to illustrate what's possible. Right. So you're absolutely right, Charlie. We're working with AA Skips and Ridges, who are giving us skips. We're working with AA Longwa, who are giving us soil. Trees for Life are giving us trees. We have this mobile forest coming into St Helier. We're working with partners JDC, who are giving us Weybridge Place. We're working with Romerils, who are giving us the back of Romerils. And we are just gently illustrating what is possible. We're not closing roads. We're not doing anything permanent. We're laying turf and then we're taking it up again. Right. So these are the first stages to kind of illustrate what might be possible, but also asking people what they think.
Yeah, because that's the next kind of very ambitious part of this project, which is you want to sort of, I don't know, I suppose kind of canvass the opinion of, I think it was about 10,000 people was the goal, is that right?
I think if we can get 10% of the population speaking up, we don't have this kind of data in Jersey. So another partner who we work side by side with is the Jersey Community Relations Trust. And the reason both they and Thrive are working on this project is because of the value of this information. So Jersey MenCap are involved, and Mind are involved, Salvation Army, JET, the schools, all of these organisations who perhaps wouldn't be commenting on perhaps the electoral register or in a normal government survey perhaps. So it's very much about us wanting to hear from everybody. So you're right, Charlie, the ways that we do it is there is an online survey in 3 different languages that takes 3 minutes.
Right.
We're also going into organisations and listening to what they have to say. And we have these temporary pop-up sites where we want people to come.
It's a really obvious question, but, what are you asking people exactly?
I think that is an excellent question. I think because it is all about questions. And, there's this great thing that we're taught as MBAs is never, ever try and solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Right.
And I think, I work in the public realm. I work in public art. There is much of public art that is, in my opinion, solving problems that don't exist. I think we are at a stage in society where we have a lot of very serious issues that we can't mess around with. And I also believe that the arts, the creative industries, that includes urban planning, landscape architecture, architects, have the capacity to solve these societal problems. So the questions that I'm asking are not necessarily, do you want a skate park or not? It's more about looking at themes of tolerance, intolerance. I'm finding a lot of my discussions, whether it's with schools, whether it's with elderly, whether it's with Mind, do focus around community intolerances. So if we're aware of what the problems are, we then set about solving the problems, not just making a want list. We need to, because, what I'm finding is, for example, Charlie, one of the schools I was working with, the year 11s said, well, the government should just do this. And, my response to them was, well, hold on a minute. If you don't exactly know what you want, how can you expect the government to know exactly what you want? So I think the purpose of hearing from everybody, whether it is through survey, whether it is contacting us through social media, whether it is discussion, is to understand what some of the community problems are across the community and then solving them. So
when you say, you said one of the things that, have you been collecting data already? So that's already in
yes.
Right. So
I love data.
Who doesn't love data? But I suppose, what kinds of problems are you trying to kind of isolate here? So you said intolerance was something, kind of community intolerance. Are there any other kind of examples of
themes? So yes. So in the survey, we look at specific issues, and then in the discussions, I'm very much led by what's going on. What I am hearing a lot is these gentle intolerances and, quite honest discussions about the impact of COVID. We all know that we haven't been rubbing along quite as we used to for 2 years because we've all been living on our own. And this was put very eloquently by some of the students I'm working with who said, we're just not very good at it at the moment. So the need for better and more social infrastructure, and by that I mean places where we can all rub along together. If we were in a capital city, this might be on an underground or a transport system. We don't really have that in St Helier. We have a bus, but other than that, we're very, very car heavy. So it's creating places where people can come together with no agenda. They haven't got to buy anything. They haven't got to hug anyone. They haven't got to do anything. That they can just be, and they can chat, and they can just be together is very important. I mean, I think other themes that certainly were very apparent when we started the research last year was that, unsurprisingly, it was St Helier where people felt there were the most problems in the public realm. We've got 32% of our population living here, so, it's unsurprising. There were also 3 key issues, and they were not enough green space, too many cars, and poor housing. So these are issues that perhaps we know, but it's really, really helpful to get the nuance, to get the details, to get the background from those who are actually living and experiencing it. Because sometimes it is perception rather than reality. And again, that is something that's really, really helpful in the analysis. So yeah, I would just urge everybody to do the survey, get in touch, and tell us what they think.
Can I just ask one thing? Where can they do the survey? I think it's an important question.
They can go on our website, which is Public Voice Common Ground, and there is a survey in 3 languages there. They can. There will be posters about Salvation Army. Know all about it. They can contact us through Instagram. What else that's not digital? Yeah, get in touch.
Great. So specific question out of the way, slightly broader question, and I feel like this is maybe going back a little bit, but you're using the phrase like public realm, and I feel like that's a concept that I've not really heard it expressed in that way. I suppose would be. I mean, I don't know if you could kind of explain what you mean by.
I'm really, again, excellent question, Charlie. And do you know, last year when I started this research, I interviewed 12 different sectors, 48 stakeholders, and the first question I asked everybody was, what do you understand public realm? And I got some pretty different answers. So I think I think the easiest way to explain it from my point of view is public space.
Right.
Space for the public, space where we go. I think what is clear is there are infrastructure responsibilities that are taken care of by I&E and Parish of St Helier, and these are a given. These need to happen. I think what Public Voice Common Ground is most interested in are the spaces in between. It's how we use these spaces. It's how, it was put very beautifully by a lady I was talking to in the Salvation Army who said, I am the public and I don't feel I have access. And it is about public space for public. I think there is often a perception, which I see quite strongly in Jersey, that public space, public realm is something that is done to us. It's done to us by government. It's done to us by parish. Whereas consultants who I've worked with who work in Malta, for instance, would say there's quite a different attitude to public space. Although they would say, arguably, the infrastructure is really a bit ropey. There's loads of cars. It's all falling down. It's really not very sophisticated. However, the attitude that the communities have to the street is very different. If there's a festival going on, if there's a religious celebration, the streets are closed and it's full of people. So it's this different, perhaps grassroots element that I'm wanting to enable. It's a public voice impacting our public spaces.
Right. So the idea is, so your project's all about kind of finding out what spaces people want, what they need. Yeah,
because I believe some of these really urgent social problems like health, well-being, inclusion, identity can be tackled. Not solely, by better public space, but I think it has an enormously important role. There was a terrifying statistic, Charlie, in 2019. There was a public spaces and movement strategy, and there was an aspiration of 0.25 hectares of green space per 1,000 head of people in St Helier. Mm-hmm. What they found, in fact, was 0.05 hectares per 1,000 head. Well, we're now in 2023, there is a lot of building going on. And, there are those that would argue, yeah, but you're not including the beaches. Mm. We're not including the beaches. But how accessible are the beaches to everybody? We still know, and I know from my work with Springfield School, there are kids who don't get to the beach. Yeah. So it's not just about space, it's about accessible space and the right space.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the question is sort of, for you would be, how do these kind of public spaces and improvements in the public realm, how would that solve things like, health and all that kind of thing? And that's a
big question.
I know. I do apologise, but I feel like that's what people would ask, because I think it was kind of talked about like a little bit in the office recently, where I think it was at the waterfront that that sail went up and things like that. That big piece of public art, and I think there's sort of two halves of people, which is like 50% of people went, oh, it's nice, it's art, it's important, and then the rest. I think the other attitude, I think, which is quite prevalent, is you could have spent that money on a hospital or something like that. It's these kinds of things where places like, you're talking about these kind of open spaces, green spaces, things like that. They have a slightly less tangible impact on, or it's not sort of the impact they have on people's well-being, health, whatever, is slightly less measurable potentially. And so
I think what you're also talking about, Charlie, is also the structure for doing it. We have something called a percentage for art policy here, which was set up by Freddie Cohen with a very good ambition of a percentage, 0.75 of development spend going on public art for the public, which is a wonderful thing. We have a policy. I have been working with SB3 and planning on updating the policy so that it is more relevant, because arguably at the moment, I think like you, Charlie, that much of the work that is going on is not really for the people. And a set of fancy gates is really not going to benefit many people. And I think it can work harder. I mean, and I say that because I understand and have seen and believe in the power of public space, public art, to change people's perceptions, to lift their spirits. And I think also, in answer to your question, I have enormous faith in human beings, and I think give them the opportunity and they'll solve these problems. Lock them up in a space underground with no outdoors, with no green space, like rats, they will fight and kill each other. So, it's kind of that simple. So I think the importance of these spaces, and, it's nothing new, and I don't remotely take credit for this. Jan Gels and all these people who've been researching it since the 60s. I mean, Bruce Labby, who I work very close with, who, as you know, did the gardens for the hospice so successfully, as well as the talking trees. We're aware of the importance of public space on our well-being. I mean, Charlie, you and I are lucky enough to live near green spaces, and I've had conversations with clients at Mind who talk about the importance of the public parks in St Helier for them, because they take off their shoes and they feel grounded, and it has this transformative quality. So we know that these spaces are important for people. We need to have more of them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You kind of mentioned this with Malta and things, but do you think Jersey sort of handles these kinds of things particularly poorly? Do you know what I mean?
I was wondering what word you were going to use.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it? I don't know. Do we have a unique issue with this? Is that fair or?
We don't know. This is a worldwide problem. The problems we have in Jersey is worldwide. I think what is different is I was sitting on a panel for what was it, Future Places Europe, and listening to some of the discussions there about public space, about public art, and the work that we're doing with Public Voice Common Ground is streaks ahead. And I think the reason is, and I applaud the government in this, in recognising their role as partner rather than lead. And I think there are many people, and many who've written for the JEP, who have some incredibly good and well-researched ideas, but the structure for implementing them is not thought through. And I think having a wonderful idea and saying, right, government need to go and do it, or parish need to go and do it, or charity need to go and finance it, is A, not realistic, B, not sustainable, which is really important, and C, it's just a really good way to get people's backs up. You can't just say, I've got a wonderful idea, now go and do it.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I suppose just one thing you said you kind of started sort of, canvassing some opinion, and you've been working on this already. I mean, I don't know whether it's too early, but I suppose based on what you've found so far, I mean, are there any sort of particular changes or projects or things that you would like to see?
Without giving the game away, you mean?
Well, sure.
I mean, I am very keen, as I think you're aware, Charlie, of never saying, I've got a marvellous idea, now you go and do it. I'm just the mouthpiece, the funnel for the people and what they are. So I will be continuing to gather and analyse this, and we'll be working with Thrive later in the year to kind of code it and theme it and chop it all up. We will then be having a commissioning board where there will be representatives from the various sectors within Jersey, but also, depending what the data looks like, they might be town planners, they might be architects, they might be landscape architects, they might be art consultants. So we will be looking at how we're going to deal with this, and then equally saying, right, so this is what the findings are, who's going to fund it. I mean, I know that hasn't answered the right question, but I think already it's very clear, and there's a very simple question on the survey that asks what specifically people would like to see more of, and from very, very early on, whether it was people responding to the survey or in interviews with me directly, it was this thing of more green space, less cars, and there were concerns about housing. I think the other thing that came up, which for me was very interesting, was this thing of creating spaces with no agenda. I read Jan Gehl's every morning, and I was reading about the importance of walking, and I am prone to this. I cycle everywhere in St Helier, or I walk, but I walk fast. What we're trying to create is places to dawdle, places that slow people down. People want to chat, they want to come together, they want to look in windows, they want to shop, maybe they want to sit down and commune. And it's these kinds of places that we're wanting in St Helier. I think the enormous importance, getting back to the 10,000 voices and hearing from all sectors of the community, is we then all have the same volume.
Right.
And, you will know from the JEP Facebook page, perhaps, that there are various individuals who are really vocal very regularly.
I couldn't possibly comment.
Of course not. And the joy of this is we've all got the same volume and the same importance.
I have two questions. But so first one would be, you talked about these places like, where we dawdle, which is a lovely idea. I mean, what is there an example of somewhere that might be sort of, I don't know, that you've seen elsewhere in the world? Or
I would say right now in St Helier, perhaps not, although I know there are those that feel pretty affectionate to the Millennium Park coming together there. I was listening to a lady from Helsinki who was talking about her favourite place, which I thought was quite interesting, and I thought I'll nick that one. And it was the South Bank in London.
Ah, okay.
And the reason for this was, it's along a river, which is always lovely. But what she said is no matter what time of day, there is always something going on. And this might be a recital in the foyer of the theatre. It might be an art exhibition. It might be the old guys selling second-hand books. And equally, what she thought was very important was it hung on to the old traditions, like the old guys selling the second-hand books. It also didn't shy away from a little bit of community tension. So the skate park there was going to, I don't know whether you knew, Charlie, it was going to go, and then it was going to stay, and then it was going to go, but it's been there for many years. And they have successfully resolved these tensions between, if you like, government, parish, community, which is what we are looking to do as well. And I thought that was a very good point. It's not perfect. It's constantly changing. Yes, you've got the embankment, and you've got people sleeping rough, but it always feels alive. You've got the Globe just down the way. It feels alive, and it feels about people, and I think if we can inspire our people, the world will be a better place.
Yeah. I have to ask the second question for the uninitiated like myself, which is, who's Jan Gels?
Look him up.
Okay.
He is a Danish, what would we call him? Probably, he is unique. I think if you were wanting to put him in a box, you might say town consultant, but that's a disgusting, horrible word, because what he's really about is people.
Okay.
He is about places for people. So since 1962, he has been researching people. How do they live? How do they move? How do they work? What do they need when they sit in a park? How do they sit? They quite like, they all gravitate towards bollards or edges, for instance. Nobody likes sitting in the middle of a cavernous space. So I think, these discussions about how we use our space are really important. It's not just a case of, hey, here's a load of green space, that'll do you. And I think St Helier particularly needs to be more thoughtful on how these spaces are designed. The other very interesting point that he comes up with is that having researched, and these are communities, as I say, since the 60s in Denmark, but also globally. So he advises globally. I would love to bring him to Jersey.
Yeah.
One of the other really helpful things he's done that will be influencing the work we're doing with Romerals is he worked out that 5 metres or multiples of 5 metres is the right distance for families to feel comfortable when they settle. So next time you're on the beach, get your tape measure out, and you'll probably find that 5 metres is kind of where people gravitate. And, these kinds of things are important to inform the next stage of the development of St Helier.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Look him up.
I will. I'll Wikipedia him straight away. Okay, so we're sort of coming up to the time now. So I just think maybe just as a kind of to round it off, I suppose it might be good to get a sort of a bit of a sort of timeline about where things are going. So I suppose what the next step would be. So you're going to continue kind of canvassing opinion, getting people to do the survey.
Yes,
that kind of thing.
do the survey.
Absolutely. And then and amidst that.
Yeah,
we've got.
So we have skips on the move.
Lovely.
We have our mobile forest on its way. The skips are being filled with soil at AA Longwa. They'll be settling. Then we'll be putting in our trees from Trees for Life and watering them and carrying them for 2 or 3 months till they're truly happy. Bruce has informed me that these trees are going to be happier than any trees anywhere in any drought, because a well-watered skip is a marvellous place for them to be. We're also working with Grow, who are going to be bringing in some of the planters that they use, which are actually, Charlie, they are big wheelie bins.
Great.
So those will be utilised as well. So these things will be happening. We're starting in July. So the big first step is going to be Weybridge Place, working with an artist called Mr. Singh, who's going to be doing a community mural.
Oh, cool.
No previous experience required, or whatever the expression is. It's colouring in, but it will be a laugh, and it will be great fun, and there's free ice cream.
Oh, so people can help make the mural?
Come, yes.
Oh, right, okay.
Because the other thing that we know is, whether it's knitting, whether it's drinking tea, whether it's colouring in, whether it's messing around with clay, these activities, we all chat. Coming and eating together is a very important thing. So on the 4th of July, Mr. Singh will be in Weybridge Place. Weybridge Place will be transformed into a multi-use space with pétanque, with grass, with a maze for children, and depending on the state of the weather this summer, we will be hopefully keeping that till September. But we will see how it goes with the heat wave.
Amazing.
So yes, there will be various pop-ups with there and Romeril's and more partners to come. But yes, the survey and the engagement is really important. I will be continuing to talk about public voice, common ground. But yes, it's the engagement piece that's really important for me. So hearing from people.
So how long is the survey running for? Just until it...
I will be starting the analysis in the autumn.
Right.
I think, knowing me, I would rather everything weighted. If there are people who still need to speak, let them speak. But really, it's picking up quite a pace at the moment. So I would say, if people can get their surveys in by September, that would be marvellous.
Terrific.
Or come down to the sites and talk to us.
Yeah.
There'll be boards. You can write what you think. You can make what you think. You can say what you think.
Oh, terrific. So, okay, great. I mean, is there any last things you wanted to add that we haven't covered so
Do
far?
the survey.
Do the survey. That is firmly on message. It's great. Well, that's everything. Thanks so much to Sasha for coming in to talk to us about her project, Public Voice, Common Ground. If you want to have your say on how Jersey's public realm should look, be sure to fill out a 3-minute survey on Sasha's website, publicvoicecommonground.co.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to visit bailiwickexpress.com or pick up a copy of your local JEP.